Hey, everybody. It is Thursday. It is 3 o'clock where I'm at. And that means that it is time for another week of taking your pitch to the next level. My name is Carlo Gonzales-Moss. You might know me from the previous round of these classes that we called Pitch World. You might know me from a little show called Most Popular Girls in School, or possibly as the CEO of MARANTY Media. For those of you who don't know, MARANTY is a company that specializes in the art of the pitch. Speaking of which, here's my sales pitch for my company. We teach creators, writers, producers, and executives all about the ins and outs of pitching, whether it's pitch coaching, building pitch decks, building in-room presentations. That is our world. That is what we do. If you're enjoying all of these classes, feel free to reach out to me at maranty.com. We do private coaching for writers, producers, executives, everybody under the sun to get you up to speed on your pitches. And we also build all kinds of materials for pitches. That means pitch decks. That means keynotes, PowerPoints, lookbooks, all that good stuff. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about taking your pitch to the next level. I got some awesome feedback from y'all after our first class last week, talking about a lot of the common errors that experienced pitchers make. Our subject today is going to be good pitches versus great pitches. We'll also touch a little bit on bad pitches too, because it's fun to shit on that a little bit. But looking back at last week, we talked about the common errors that we see experienced pitchers make. Ultimately, what it boils down to is having the confidence in the work that you've done, the confidence that comes from preparation. That's one of the big things that we're going to be talking about in today's class. But thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between good, great, and bad pitches overall. And then we're going to dig into what defines a great pitch. It's, not necessarily an exhaustive list by any means, but I've identified a few key areas that you can use and that you can really focus on as you're building out your pitch that are going to take you from being a good pitcher, being somebody who gets into rooms and might even have some measure of success, to ultimately becoming somebody who every time that you walk into a pitch room, you can walk in there with the confidence knowing this is what I do. This is part of my business that I enjoy and that I am excellent at. Because ultimately that level of confidence comes across to a buyer and makes it that much more likely that you're going to get to sell your show and do the thing that you really want to do, which is make TV shows and be a creator and be a writer in that way, So we're talking about good pitches versus great pitches. Let's identify some of the hallmarks of a good pitcher, a bad pitcher, and a great pitcher. So before I jump into that, though, want to make a quick note. If you have questions, this is a live stream. So if you're watching this live right now, you might be watching it on Facebook, might be watching it on YouTube. Go ahead, leave a comment below. I have a little window over here where the comments will pop up, and I'll be able to answer your question right away. I want this to be an interactive experience for y'all. So if you have questions or you have comments, feel free to shoot them my way. This is a two-way conversation, so you don't need me talking at you the whole time. Happy to answer any and all questions that pop up, from the very general all the way down to like a specific thing that you might be dealing with in your pitch. Oftentimes I find that the things you're experiencing, even if it's really specific, might actually help somebody else watching this too. So feel free to fire away in that way. And also, if you are watching this on delay, if you're watching it on demand, leave a comment before each class. I always go back to our previous live streams and check to see if there's been any comments throughout the week, any questions that have popped up. And when those pop up, I will always make sure to acknowledge those in the next live stream. So if you got questions in any way, reach out, ask them. I'm an open book here. The thing that I always say is I was a really bad pitcher for a long time so that you don't have to be. I made all the mistakes so that you ain't got to make them. So you can leave comments. Also feel free to reach out to me either on social media. I'm at Carlo Moss on all forms of social media, or you can go straight to maranty.com, which is my website. There's a form there. Shoot me a question via that form, and I'll reach out to you direct, and we might even answer the question here on the live stream. So with all that in mind, let's talk about good pitches. Let's talk about great pitches. Let's talk about bad pitches and everything in between. So a good pitcher, what does that look like? Might be a successful staff writer, maybe a seasoned performer. It's somebody who knows what they're doing and who's been in pitch rooms before. But a great pitcher, that's the type of person who walks into a room and the executives' faces light up because they know that they're about to get a show, because they've built a reputation with their work. A great pitcher walks in and all of a sudden all eyes are on them and they are happy with that scenario. They're ready to tell you all about the show. They're bursting with excitement. They know how to control the room, make sure that everybody's being taken care of energetically, making sure that they're able to maintain everyone's focus. Whereas a good pitcher, they might have some good ideas. They might be able to rattle off some thoughts that they've written down, but they're not going to engage on that deeper level. And ultimately, engaging an executive on that deeper level is what leads to consistent sales. I want to use an example that I had recently, to toot my own horn, but I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. So as I mentioned in our last class, over the past few months, I've been pitching a lot more, especially on projects where I'm the creator as opposed to the executives. I had a project that I took out a couple weeks ago and pitched a network, ultimately found that, they passed. Pitch went really well, got good feedback. And what they told me was that, honestly, this was kind of a courtesy meeting just because we thought that this was a cool idea and we wanted to hear it and we were excited about hearing it, but we knew there was no chance in hell that this would ever be able to be on our network. And then the pitch went so well that they had to have an actual serious conversation of, guys, do we think that we need to buy this? And ultimately they passed because the answer that they landed on was no. They could not put that on their air. But that's what happens when you're a great pitcher, is you can take a meeting that starts out and it's like, it seems like a cool idea. Let's hear them out. And then it turns into an actual conversation. A good pitcher is going to go in and they're going to pitch it and they're going to be like, not a good fit. See you later. A great pitcher is going to be able to generate that conversation between those executives when they go back and they're talking to their bosses and they're talking to their colleagues and saying, like, listen, we need to talk about this. And of course, a great pitcher is also ultimately the type of person who can sell shows time and again. I mean, that's one of the great things about pitching, is there is a tangible result that you can point to that says, like, I'm good at this because I've sold X number of shows. I'm good at this because of the results that I've produced. But the thing to remember is that there are a lot of things out of your control. And that's going to be one of the things that we talk about that really defines a great pitcher, is properly managing your expectations. But that's going to be at the end of our chat. First, we're going to dig into what defines a great pitch. The first point is preparation. And if y'all have been taking my classes or been working with me any amount of time, you know that this is one that I hammer home all the time. And there's a reason for that, because no matter how many times I say it, time and again, I find that people do not want to put in that work. They don't want to put in the preparation. They don't want to do the hard work that comes with doing it over and over and over again. So when I say preparation, here's what I'm talking about. This is how we go from being good pitchers to great pitchers, and how we ultimately sell more shows than we were before. So when we're thinking about preparation, have you spent the time getting to know your show inside and out? Or do you just have some good talking points and a basic understanding of what you've built? Have you made the hard, painful decisions that come with developing a show, so that you can have clear answers when executives ask you questions about your vision of the show? Have you sat down with the show and gone, oh man, I don't know if I want it to go this way or this way. I like them both, and ultimately landed on one? That's part of that preparation, is knowing the show inside out, upside down, being able to literally create a Bible about it. But knowing that show on that level really is going to set you apart, because when I see good pitchers, they know their show. They're like, it's this idea, it's got a little bit of this. And usually it's, writers, creators, performers who know the business. who have been through the ringer a little bit. Like, they can pitch you a show. But what takes it to another level is walking in there and going like, you can ask me any question you want. I know this show. I've made the decisions. I've made the hard choices that come with learning about this thing as an organic being and literally getting to know it. So to reiterate, do you have the clear answers when executives ask you questions about your vision of the show? Because time and again, I have seen that is the moment when I see creators fall apart more than any other. Because these are the questions that tell me as an executive, not only if you're going to be able to execute your vision, but if you even have the ability to identify what that vision is in order to execute it. Because that's a big step of it, right? That's a huge part of it, is being able to say, here is my vision, and I know how to execute it. Most creators, most people that are coming in and pitching, they probably haven't even done one of those steps. In order to be a great pitcher, you need to do both of those. And the way that you do that is getting to know your show inside and out, digging into the meat of it, building out episodes, building out samples, writing pieces of sample dialogue. One of the biggest things that I tell my creators is, have you put these characters on paper? What does it sound like when words start going into their mouths? Because a character in a script might sound different than a character in a treatment. And a lot of the things that you think might work in the abstract might not actually work in execution. Ultimately, like, I found a lot of times I get to know my characters a lot better when I sit down and I go, let me just write out, like a random scene that might happen in this world. And that's part of the preparation that it takes to being a great pitcher, and finding the quickest ways that you can prepare yourself, finding the most expedient ways that you go, okay, this is how I get to know my characters, and developing a process. That is a huge part of your preparation, is having a process that you can call your own, that when I'm developing a show, this is what I do. So preparation. So the first part of that preparation is getting to know the show inside and out. That's a baseline thing that you have to do if you're going to sell this show, because I, as the executive, am going to ask you questions. And if you don't have answers to that, that's going to tell me that you don't know that show. And so you have to be the expert on that. You created it. You're the parent. Think of a good parent versus a great parent versus a bad parent. A great parent knows that kid inside and out, right? They're the number one expert on that kid. There shouldn't be another person in the world who knows that kid better than the parent, at least early on, right? Eventually those kids are going to grow up. Their friends are going to know them better. But at the early stages, that parent needs to know that kid more than anybody else. You need to treat your stories and your shows in the same way. Prepare for a pitch by learning everything you can about that show. Treat it as an organic, living being. Another part of preparation, and this is the one I hammer home, rehearse. So have you rehearsed? Let's identify the differences, how a bad pitcher rehearses, how a good pitcher rehearses, how a great pitcher rehearses. So bad pitcher, they're going to wait till the night before. They're going to write down a few bullet points, and they're going to trust that they got this. Spoiler alert, they do not got this. Then a good pitcher, they're going to rehearse, right? They're going to make sure that they rehearse, and they'll often tell themselves at some point, I don't want to be over-rehearsed. There are very few situations in which you as a pitcher can be over-rehearsed, honestly. If you're saying that, the odds are you've just gotten kind of bored, and so you're finding an excuse you don't have to rehearse anymore. It's possible to have it happen, but honestly, it's way rarer than you think. So with a good pitcher, once they've gotten to the point that they're sick of the thing, once they've gotten to the point where they've heard it so many times, they're like, oh, this again, they're probably just going to leave it alone. And ultimately, that's going to show in the final product. Or there'll be the other type of pitcher, which is a tinkerer. And they're going to tinker and tinker and tinker, convinced that if they just adjust the right number of knobs, just so, and they turn this and they tweak this and they adjust this language, maybe if I put an and here or a but there and I do this, this, and this, then I'll be able to make the sale. And that ultimately comes down to a control issue. Those types of pitchers believe that no matter what, it is on them to sell the show, and it is only their decisions that will sell the show. And if they can find the magic formula, then they can sell anything. That's just not true. Sometimes it's not a good fit. And so a great pitcher They're going to rehearse diligently, trusting their process and knowing when the right time is to make each particular kind of adjustment. They'll know that it's a part of the process to get sick of hearing the same thing over and over again. They'll know, like, oh, that's supposed to happen. Okay, yeah, I've heard myself say this about 60 times. Yeah, okay, I'm really tired of my own voice and the way that I say this joke. That's supposed to happen, so I'm on the right track here. They will trust themselves and the work that they put into this. A clear indication of a great pitcher is this: a quiet confidence and a trust in your process and the work that you've put in. It's the same energy that you walk into when you're in high school and you know you've studied for the test. Test shows up and you go, oh yeah, I know all these answers. It's that quiet confidence, not an overconfidence, not a cockiness, but walking into that room knowing I did the homework. I'm good. And so those are the differences between a great pitcher and a good pitcher when it comes to preparation. Good pitcher, either they're going to get sick of it and just be like, I'm done, I've done enough, or they're going to need to constantly tinker. A great pitcher is going to know that happy medium. They're going to know, okay, well, I've got to pitch in an hour. Now is not the time to tinker with all of my language. Now is not the time for nitty gritty details. They'll recognize like, oh, okay, we're a week out. I can tweak this, this, and this. I can focus on this. This part of it is working well and I can leave well enough alone. And a lot of that comes from time, and a lot of it comes from just doing the damn thing over and over and over again. I wish that there was a quicker way to get to that point, but sorry, that's kind of the name of the game, is being cool with working hard and doing it over and over and over again. So think about that. Preparation, one of the key things that turns a good pitcher into a great pitcher, and again, leads to you selling more shows, is that you walk in there and you're ready. You've done your homework. The next thing that we can think about when we're identifying good pitchers versus great pitchers is focus. A focused pitch makes all the difference in the world, because an unfocused pitch, number one, there's not going to be that much preparation behind it, because that's what preparation does, is you're able to put everything in front of you. You're able to write everything down and go, all right, I'm going to hit this point. Then I'm going to hit this point. I'm going to pivot over here. Then I turn it into a joke here. There's probably going to be a laugh line over there. You know what's coming. And when I'm talking about focus in a pitch, here are some questions to ask. Are you pitching the show that they're buying? That's a point that we touched on a little bit in our first round of classes, but let's dig into it a little bit more here. Are you pitching the show that they are buying? This is something that I see a lot of times with good pitchers, where they might be excited about some different avenue of their pitch and they go down that road, but ultimately it's not the show. It might be a personal anecdote that they spend too much time on. It might be, an element of the world building that they're just obsessed with and they want to make sure that you get every detail about it. And ultimately we forget about the main story of the show. A good pitcher focuses on pitching the show that the buyer is going to buy. What's going to be on my screen, right? So if I'm going to give you a couple $1 million to make this show, the pitch had better be focused on what I'm paying for. What do the episodes look like? How are the characters behaving now when we're seeing them, versus here's a whole bunch of backstory that you're never going to see, but I've spent a lot of time on it in my preparation stage, and now I feel the need to justify the time I spent on that by putting way too much of it into the pitch. A focused pitch knows exactly how much you want to spend on backstory, which is not very much, how much you want to spend on world building, and spends most of its time focused on the show that the buyer is going to buy. Because the thing that does is it activates the buyer's imagination. If you're living in the world of the show that's going to be on screen, the buyer should be able to see that. They should be able to picture, oh, okay, well, you've told me about, this character's personality and how they relate to this person. I can see how those two would interact when stuck in an elevator together. It's the typical kind of sitcom pitch, right? Another question that you want to ask in relation to focus: do you have a clear rhythm and flow to the pitch? There's so many different nuanced parts of a pitch that you want to make sure that there's a music to it. You want to be able to use transitional statements. One of the errors that I see a lot of pitchers make is they'll get to the end of a section and not think, oh, how do I tie this into the next section? It might be a joke. It might be as simple as just adding a transitional phrase when you're done with your characters that's as simple as like, so now that we've talked about the characters, let's take a look at the world that they live in, as opposed to, okay, now it's time to talk about the world. Big difference, right? It communicates the shorthand that we always talk about that tells the person on the other end of the table or the other end of the Zoom, I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional. If you give me a whole bunch of money, I'm not going to throw it away, and I'm not going to get you fired. So do you have a clear rhythm and flow to the pitch? Do you have an element of the pitch that communicates that you know what you're doing? Is there a music to your pitch? Is there an up and a down? Do you have a way of going through each of your sections so that you're clearly indicating to the buyer, all right, we're wrapping up this section, we're moving to the next section? There needs to be that music so that the buyer feels like they're being taken care of. And one of the clearest parts of that is as you get towards the end. I talk about the energetic cliff that happens usually around minute 18, where no matter how good your stuff is, that executive starts thinking about lunch, starts thinking about where they parked their car, their mind starts to flow. And if you're able to clearly indicate where you're at in your pitch, right? Like if you've created that structure, that flow, and that rhythm, by the time you're hitting the season arcs, we're all feeling pretty safe and comfortable knowing, all right, we're coming in for a nice, safe landing here. Usually you bring it in with a conclusion and a summary, and it feels like a piece of art, really. You've taken your 18 to 20 minutes and you've made the most of it because of that rhythm and that flow. Another thing to think about with focus, do you know where you're going? Are you working off of bullet points here where you're just strictly saying like, all right, I'm going to talk about this and now I think that's done and we'll go to the next part? Or are you sitting there with a clear outline, a clear structure to your pitch where you are in charge and you're maintaining control of your pitch and saying like, now we're going to go to characters. Now we're going to go here, where you know exactly where each step of your pitch is going to land. If you're trying to go off the top of your head, good luck to you, because that is not going to be a focused pitch. And that is going to clearly define you as something less than a great pitcher. And that's what this is all about working towards. Another great thing to think about in focus. Are you overwhelming the buyer with too much information that won't affect their decision, right? Things like backstory, world building, nitty-gritty details, and plot points. Are you overwhelming them so that they're getting all of this information and then can't remember the name of your main character? Or are you focusing your information so that you're making it clear, here's the part I need you to remember? I'm not going to tell you every detail about how this character grew up or about what the town currency system is, because ultimately that's not going to be the thing that makes you buy this show. The thing that makes you buy this show is going to be a connection with the characters and a connection with the story and a need to see more and a need to see it in real life. So those are the things that I'm going to focus on. Everything else, if I'm throwing so many different things at you, you're going to be sitting there as the buyer having information overload, and all of a sudden, everything is going to sound the same. To use an object lesson here, one of the things that I struggle with personally, I've been very open about the fact that I'm autistic and have very severe ADHD. And when I go into a restaurant, when I first started dating my wife, I had to explain this to her, that when I go into a restaurant, if you're sitting across from me, I hear everyone's conversations at the same volume level. This table over here sounds the exact same as the person talking directly to me. So when I walk into a restaurant, I have to sit ideally away from the crowd. If I'm staring, if the person across from me is sitting here and then there's a wall behind them, that's my ideal situation. Because if I'm looking at a crowd, everything in the restaurant sounds the same to me. And that's what happens when you have a pitch that's way too overloaded with needless information, is all of that information starts sounding the same. Because I, as an executive, am hearing this for the first time. I don't have the ability to sit there and pick out and go, okay, I don't need to listen to this part. I'm just going to focus on this part. You're throwing all of this at me at once. My brain can't process all of that and delineate between the important parts. That's your job as the pitcher, as the storyteller, to communicate to me, the buyer, this is the important part. Focus on this, and to direct the buyer's mind in that way. Because otherwise, you're going to end up with somebody walking out of the pitch, turning to their colleagues and going, what exactly was that about? Because they spent way more time talking about the engine of the spaceship than they did about the main characters. So focus, focus, focus. Do not overwhelm the buyer with too much information that's not going to affect their decision. That should always be your golden rule and your North Star that you go back to, and any other analogy you want to think of. Is this going to affect their decision? Is this going to make them buy the show or not buy the show? And ultimately, if it's not going to affect it, you probably don't need to mess with it. It probably doesn't need to be in your pitch. So keep your focus on that. A great pitcher pitches in a focused manner. Next thing, performance. Some of you will love this. Some of you will hate this. But like it or not, a pitch is a performance. If you have a performing background, like me, I started as an actor. I got my degree in experimental theater. And I did years and years of improv. So that's an unfair advantage that I'm going into a pitch room with, is I've been performing since I was a kid. And if you have a performing background, or even if you're just a naturally outgoing person, sorry, you have an advantage. And to those of you who don't have performing backgrounds or who are not naturally outgoing, pitching is going to be a little bit harder. But you can lean into the things that are specific about yourself. And we're going to get to this point in a little bit of focusing on what you're the best at. But you can lean into those aspects of yourself so that you're highlighting your strengths. But this is, at the end of the day, a performance. You're going in front of a group of people, either live or, most likely on Zoom, and talking by yourself for 20 minutes straight. That's a performance, any way you want to cut it. So when we think about that performance, those of you who are watching this and you have a performing background, congratulations. Lean into that. Don't undercompensate and do less. Lean into the fact of I've already got to step up here. Let me lean into the aspect of myself that likes to perform, that likes to be big. This is the place to do it. And if you're not, focus on the aspects of yourself that are strengths and that you can present in a sales pitch from a strong point of view, and focus on ways that you can get better as a performer, because this is a huge part of it. I talk a lot about the idea of pitching is to writing as auditioning is to acting. And if you're not good at one, you don't get to do the other thing. So if you're just a writer and you want to create shows and you want to be a showrunner, but the idea of going in front of a group of people terrifies you, you're going to have to figure out ways to get better at that and to become more comfortable at that, because this ultimately is a performance in some way. So when we think about the performance, the questions that we're asking, do you know how to present this information in a way that's engaging and can activate the buyer's imagination? You can write a good show, you can create on paper, but can you then communicate it in a room? Because nobody's going to sit there and be like, oh, you're really bad on camera. We're just going to have a surrogate talk for you. We're going to hire an actor to be you. That doesn't happen. That's not a real thing. You're going to have to get in front of that group of executives and explain your show to them in a way that's engaging and that can activate their imagination so that they can see what that show is going to look like on TV, because otherwise it ain't going to be on TV. So do you know how to present that information, synthesize it down and go, here you go. Here it is, performed for you in a way that ultimately gets you to say, I need to see that on my TV. Here's a bucket of money. Go make it. And then you get to do the thing that's your favorite. Now, how do we get better at the performance? This is one thing that, if you take anything away, realize you can get better at this. This is a skill that you can exercise, practice, and ultimately improve that. And even if you're one of those people who have a performing background, you're a natural performer, you love being on camera, on stage, on screen, you also can get better at this. So what are the ways that we get better at the performance, regardless of if we have a performing background or not? Number one, I say it all the time, practice, practice, practice. Over and over again, the best pitches are the ones that have been rehearsed, because that's how we identify what's working and what's not working. I talk about practice all the time. I talk about rehearsal all the time. So you get it. Practice, practice, practice. Another way to get better at the performance, get some outside opinions, whether it's your friends, whether it's your collaborators, anybody that you can find that you can pitch to, that you can practice your pitch with. Find them, ask them, do it over and over again, and listen to what they have to say. Come at it from a place of humility where you can go, hey, I'm taking this show out. Let me give you my pitch. Be brutally honest with me. And when they're giving you notes, when they're telling you what worked and what didn't work, don't argue. Sit down with a notepad or sit down with your computer and go, okay, great. Maybe you'll agree with some of that stuff. Maybe you won't. But that's ultimately going to help you get that third-party perspective so that the things that need improvement actually get improved. All right. Oh, here's another one for the performance. Bring fucking water. Because talking for 20 minutes, or I guess, I've been going for 30 minutes here. Talking for 20 minutes straight, your mouth's going to get dry. So, that lesson I think that we talked about in our first class in the first session of the first go round, make sure when they offer you water that you accept the water. And if you're pitching on Zoom, make sure you have some water nearby, because ultimately you're going to need it. Another way to get better at the performance is you got to figure out how to get over your stage fright. All of us on some level are going to have some level of stage fright. For the performers, it's going to be pretty small. For others, might be huge. The idea of hopping on a Zoom and just like having eyes staring at you silently might be terrifying. So figure out ways to get over your stage fright, because it can also be pretty awkward to be big and animated on Zoom when you're by yourself in your living room. Or it might even be more awkward when, say, your roommate, or like me, your wife, is in the room with you, hearing just your side of it. Understand that's going to feel weird. That's going to feel awkward. And get over it and recognize, like, this is going to feel really weird, but let me lean into it. Embrace the discomfort there. Embrace the aspect of it, of being, I'm a madman right now, yelling in my living room to a computer, to a bunch of blank faces who are at best smiling or laughing at my jokes, but I can't hear them because they're all on mute because they're very polite. Another great way to get better at the performance is scripting. A scripted pitch is almost always going to yield a better performance, as long as you're not just reading off of it. If you're going through reading bullet points, then that's not going to be good at all. But if you're able to focus strictly on a performance that you've written down, that you've rehearsed, it's going to come off so much better than something where you've got a couple of bullet points and you're like, oh, right, I need to figure out how exactly I'm going to phrase this on the fly. Your brain only has a limited amount of focus. And if you can direct all that focus to performing something that's already been written down, you're going to be so far ahead of the curve. So script yourself out ahead of time in ways that are going to put you in a position to succeed.
Sorry, could you say that again? Sorry.
I swear to God, at least once every class, my watch thinks that I'm talking to. So yeah, scripting, huge. Thinking like bigger term, some things that you can do if you're struggling as a performer in pitch rooms, take some improv classes. That's going to get you out of your comfort zone, especially if you're the type of person that doesn't like performing. Think of things that you like. The minute you think about it, you're like, oh, that makes me super uncomfortable. Taking improv classes will help. Taking acting classes will help. Things where you're performing regularly and you're taking that kind of like, you're taking that thing that's really scary that you never do, and you're doing it more often, is going to make it less scary. That's a simple principle of life. So and that takes me to the final point about performance and how you get better at your performance. Do things regularly to get you out of your comfort zone. This is like, this isn't just performance and pitch advice. This is life advice. And this is something that I'm preaching to myself right now as much as I'm preaching to all of you. Do things on the reg that get you out of your comfort zone, because that is how you grow in any way. And so if you're trying to get better as a performer, do the thing that makes you uncomfortable. Get in front of an audience, get in front of people. It can be as low stakes as possible, but do things that get you out of your comfort zone, especially as we come out of the pandemic. Like a lot of us, we were in our houses for a long time, in our homes, in our literal comfort zone. And that can feel very awkward and very uncomfortable getting back out into the world in that way. And so that's going to be something that is going to make you a better performer and a better pitcher, is just naturally getting out of your comfort zone whenever you can. Being okay doing things that you might suck at first. All right. So those are going to help you with performance. In thinking about your performance, two things that should come across in your pitch. Number one, excitement. If you're not excited about your show, then how on earth is anybody else going to be? You're telling me that you put in all this work, you spent hours and hours and weeks and days and maybe years working on this show, and you come into my office and you're not even excited about it. You're just pitching it like this because you think that it sounds cooler if you're detached and aloof and sound like a tech bro who just speaks monotonely about engagement and content, and we really believe in this thing. Hell no. You made this show. Be excited about it. Hell, be excited about the fact that not many people can create their own show, and you did. You made that show. You spent the time, did the hard work. You deserve to be excited about this thing, and you need to communicate that excitement to the buyer on the other end of the table or on the other end of the Zoom. But yeah, excitement is contagious, and it comes across so clearly if you are not excited about the show that you're pitching. If it just feels like another random idea that you had, then why the hell am I going to spend a bunch of money on it? Then why the hell am I, as an executive, going to put my career on the line for you? Because executives, they're sitting there going they don't want failure. They don't want to get fired. They don't want to have a big blunder on their hands. They want to have a show that ultimately makes them look great, that they've connected with. And the way that we connect is through excitement, is by conveying to them, I created this thing. I'm really excited about it. I made this show. I made this story, and I want to share it with you. When that comes through, that energy, that enthusiasm, it's infectious. I made this thing and I can't help but share it with you. That also tells the executive, there is no question why I am the person to tell this story. If you're ambivalent about it, then why are you going to be the one to tell that story? If you just be like, whatever, I just came up with this thing, I can probably hire anybody else to tell that story too. But if it's bursting out of you, if this is a story that has to be told and it's conveyed through the excitement that you have for the project, then I'm able to look at you and go, okay, I want to make this show, and clearly you're the only person to do it. So excitement, excitement, excitement. Convey it through your face, convey it through your energy, convey it through your voice. Everything about you should be reading, oh my God, this person loves this show, and it excites them. That excitement is contagious. Make sure that is a part of your pitch. And also, because energy is a huge component of the pitch and of keeping focus, make sure that you have dynamic changes in your voice that sound authentic and that are coming from that place of excitement. Because if you're throwing a bunch of monotone at me, I'm going to tune you out real quick, either by choice or just that's the way that attention works. Is if you're really monotone and boring, it's going to be a lot harder to pay attention for 20 minutes. The other key element of performance that I want you to focus on is storytelling. A great pitcher is a great storyteller. Are you a good storyteller? Are you a great storyteller? This needs to be more than just listing information about the show. That's the reason why we have these calls and why we set pitch meetings, and why that's the form that we use to sell shows. Because honestly, if you're just going to read a bunch of dry bullet points back to me, that could have been an email. But me in front of you, acting out this show, giving you all of my excitement, sharing with you the energy that surrounds this show and that surrounds me as a creator, well, you can't put that on paper. That needs to be in front of you. There should be something tangible there. And I should be able to tangibly convey all the information about the show in a way that's engaging to you, that makes you want to hop on this runaway train. Transport me into the world of your show. Because ultimately, we go back to this point over and over again, your job as a pitcher is to activate the executive's imagination. And the gold standard is if they start pitching story ideas to you, you got them. The show's sold. Because once their imagination is activated and they're seeing all the different ways that this show could happen, this show could take place, that is when they buy shows. That is when they make the big decision to turn this from an idea in your head and an idea on a piece of paper or a computer into a tangible living thing that is showing up on your screens, that's giving people jobs, and that ultimately then is becoming your life's work. How friggin' cool is that? The last thing I'll say about performance is accept the fact that this is a sales pitch. That is the hard, honest truth. This is a business meeting, and you need to figure out how you can put yourself in the best possible position for a sale. Do not be the crabby writer who's sitting there being like, I just want to write and everything else is bullshit. Figure out your angle into it. Don't be complaining about like, I didn't get into this to be a salesman. I'm a writer. I'm a producer. I'm an executive. I like to be on set, nothing else. And I hate this stuff. Blah, blah, blah. It's a sales pitch. That's what we're doing. You're trying to literally sell a show. So guess what? That's a part of business, is pitching, is doing a sales pitch. So you have got to figure out what is the angle that this buyer, that this customer is going to hook onto, that is ultimately going to lead to a sale. No matter any way you slice it, that's what this is. This is a sales pitch. We just cut the first word out usually and call it a pitch. That's what it is. It's a sales pitch. You're trying to get something sold. So accept that, recognize that, and recognize that, yes, we are in the arts. We are artists. We are creative beings. That's why we got into this, but there is also a business aspect to it, and we need to get good at both parts of it. Next point I want to hit, the thing that separates a good pitcher from a great pitcher, leaning into the things that only you can do. What makes you special? What do you do better than anybody else? What is your secret sauce, y'all? I'll tell you a little bit like personal experience. Now, like I said, I come from a performing background, come from a comedy background, improv, sketch, lots of voiceover, lots of animation. If I'm pitching an animated show, best believe I'm going to be doing voices in the pitch. Every chance that I get, obviously to a certain degree. Like I'm not doing the entire most popular girls pitches. As Rachel Tyson, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for being here. I'm not doing the entire thing, but I'm finding those key places where I can flex my muscles, where I can say, here's the thing that I know that people love, and that's the feedback that I get. Whenever I'm pitching an animated show, if I'm doing voices, inevitably the feedback that I get from my producers, from my execs, is we really like that moment with the voices. If you can find anywhere else to put it in, that's how I know I've done it the perfect amount, right? So that's something that I do better than anybody else, that I'm going to make sure I make a part of my pitch. Where are the places that you can flex your muscles? Are you really good with dialogue as a writer? Build some sample dialogue back and forth in your pitch. Show us the thing that you're great at. Again, that answers the question, this is why nobody else can make this show. Why are you the person to tell this story and to run this show? Are you a really good world builder? Use that. Set yourself apart in any and every way that you possibly can, okay? Lean into the thing that you're better at than anybody else. One of the other things that I know I'm really good at is graphic design. And so I'm always making sure that the presentations that I walk into the room with are awesome and beautiful and visually engaging. That's one of the things that I know I have an unfair advantage at. I identify that and go, all right, here's the thing that I do great. Let me do it great. So figure that out for yourself. What are the things that you know you're good at? And if you don't know the things that you're good at, number one, spend the time, sit down, do a little journaling, do a little deep diving, do a little meditating, identify either what you hear over and over again as a compliment, or identify the thing that you love doing. When you're looking at your process, whether you're writing, you're creating a show, what's the part where you're happiest? Just, be a detective, be on the lookout for that. And finally, like, if you can't figure it out beyond that, ask people, hey, like, I know I'm doing good at this writing thing. What's the part of my writing that works best for you? What do you think I do better than anybody else? Interview other people. You might be surprised at some of the answers you get. I remember a few months ago, I reached out to an old friend that I hadn't talked to in a couple of years, and he said something that just like, it warmed my heart so much. I had written him a long email, and the first thing he said was like, oh, there's that big Carlo energy that I miss so much. And I went, oh, that's something that people connect with? I thought that was something that was kind of like annoying about me, was that I've got like all this energy and I'm big and bold and bright. I went, oh, That's something that other people like. Ask around. Be investigative. Hey, what do you like about me? Hey, what's special about me? My writing. What's the thing that you connect with? Because a lot of times people will be able to identify, like, you know what's special about your writing? You're the best at this. And that also puts you in a position, like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but that might put you in a position where you're like, I'm really good at dialogue. Let me go work with somebody who's really good at A to B storytelling, at figuring out plot points and getting us from point A to point B. And that you might be able to create an awesome team out of that, where you can fill in each other's gaps. So figure out what you're really good at and lean into it in the pitch. Don't be afraid of that. If you're a performer, lean into the fact that you're a performer. Be big, embarrass the fuck out of yourself inside of your apartment when nobody's looking. Feel free to go big and be the person that you are. Lean into the things that you and only you can do. Next thing I want to hit on, identifying what do great pitchers do, what makes you a great pitcher and sets you apart from a good pitcher. Being comfortable and genuine. Friggin' genuineness. Being an authentic person. Being real. We as executives can see through bullshit. Tell us your story from an authentic, relatable place. Find that way to connect with us by being you, really you, not the fake version of you, not the performance version of you. We've been talking about performance, but that's a part of this, is getting real, is finding the things in yourself that other people can relate to. And that comes from being authentic, from taking your walls that you've put up and bringing them down and allowing yourself to come from a place of authenticity, being vulnerable with people that you may have never necessarily met before. That is huge. It's an incredible skill to be able to take your personal experience, your point of view, synthesize that into a story, and then communicate that story in such a way that everyone listening connects to it, relates to it, finds a piece of themselves in it, and wants to do everything they can to see it brought into the world. I'm going to say that one more time for people in the cheap seats. It is an incredible skill to be able to take your personal experience and your personal point of view, synthesize it down into a story, and then be able to communicate that story in such a way that everyone listening, the buyers and executives you're pitching to, everyone listening connects to it, relates to it, finds a piece of themselves in it, and ultimately wants to do everything they can to see it brought to the world. Come to that pitch with a level of genuineness and authenticity, and people will respond to it. If you run the risk, take the big swing, open yourself up. I remember for a long time, I wanted to come off as smart, as clever, as, the smartest person in the room. And I put a wall between myself and the people that I was pitching to, because I only wanted to present myself in the best light. When I started being genuine, when I started being vulnerable, when I started opening up about my own self and communicating in a way that was authentically me, that's when I started to see results. I remember I started being really open in pitches. I had written a show. It's like a superhero show, and I was digging into where some of the characters came from. I talked very openly about my struggles with ADHD and autism, and people connected to that because I was being real. I was like, hey, here's where this character came from. It's from my own struggle. Here's what's hard about life for me. And that was something that people connected with because it's fucking real. And that's hard. That's really hard to do, especially on a Zoom. To sit there and go, here's my authentic story. Here's me. Here's 100% of me with no walls up, stranger. I'm putting myself in a vulnerable place where you could reject this thing that is authentically me, but I'm willing to take that risk because at the end of it is the ultimate reward, right? Is the dream that we've all had for any number of years. Some of us since we were little kids dreaming about making TV shows. That's why we got into this, right? And that, you're going to risk a lot. You're going to risk being vulnerable and somebody, laughing at you or taking advantage of you, but that's the only way to be. And that is the thing that people connect with, is when you are that real, authentic, genuine self that you are. Now, on the other end of that, a huge part of pitching and being a great pitcher is being able to make everyone else in the room comfortable, having a comfort with yourself, with the material, and having an energy about you that ties the whole room together. You got to be the leader of that room. Talk to the people on the other end. That genuineness is going to lead you in creating that comfortable energy where everybody just feels completely at ease being there. Because it can often be a really uncomfortable situation, especially if you've never met any of these execs before, and it's just like this awkward small talk of like, hello, how are you? How is your businessing? Like that can be really tough. But if you're coming from a genuine place and you have the ability to make everyone in that room comfortable, if you can be that glue, you can be kind of that quarterback or point guard, depending on which sports analogy you want. That is going to work wonders in setting the tone for your pitch and creating a positive energy around the pitch and around the project. There's a lot when you're an executive, like there's a lot where you go by feeling, where if you feel really uncomfortable in a pitch, there's a part of it that's like, do I really want to work with this person if I give them a bunch of money and then I have to like be the exec on their show? They're not necessarily a great hang, right? But if you can come at it from a place of realness, from a place of genuineness, where you're talking to the people on the other end, where your small talk is genuine, where you're asking the exec on the other end, like, how's your day going? How are your kids? Like if you know them, if you have a relationship built there, and you're talking to them as a person, as opposed to a money dispensing machine, which is honestly how a lot of creators talk, right? They are either super intimidated and don't want to be genuine and real because this person at the other end has the ability to literally change their lives, or they treat the executive as a money dispensing machine and you have millions of dollars, please hand them to me because I have a television show. Instead, recognizing that they're human beings on the other end and communicating with them as such. And that level of comfort, that energy should be present in your entire pitch. You should be able to be like a human being and be fucking real with everybody. This experience is a little awkward and weird for everybody. Accept that and take it on yourself to be the person to alleviate that awkwardness and that weirdness. Because you're the one who created this show. You're the reason why we're here today in this meeting. It's on you. It's your job to lead the room and the call. That means that you have to drive the energy of the entire meeting. And then on the back end of it, being genuine, being real, and being able to create that comfortable energy also comes with, at the end, being nice and saying thank you. It's incredible to me how few creators at the end of a pitch don't take the time to just recognize that everyone took time out of their day to hear this and to thank them for that. Like that's just a little thing. Just a little thing at the end of the call. Say, hey, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Like that's real. That's genuine. If you have a relationship with the exec, send them an email afterwards. Even if they pass, even if you get a pass in the room, you get a pass a couple of days later, send them an email back saying like, hey, really appreciate you taking the time. You didn't have to do that. I understand your time is valuable. And so thank you. Gratitude. That is a genuine human thing that none of us do enough. Be grateful, be thankful. And at the end of your pitch, be nice and say thank you before you get off the call. Last thing here, we got 5 minutes left, that identifies a great pitcher. They know how to manage their expectations. Properly managed expectations. This right here is one of the biggest things that I see that defines good pitchers from great pitchers. The pitchers who know what they're doing, who've been in this and who consistently sell shows versus the kids that are a little full of themselves that think that every pitch they should be selling the show. Manage your expectations. Understand the odds here. You are not going to sell your show on every pitch that you go into. The fact that you're in this room alone means that you have achieved a measure of success that most people in this industry can only dream of, let alone the rest of the world. You're pitching at TV networks and stuff? Oh my God, you've made it. Maybe you can't pay your rent, and that's why you're pitching here, because if you get a couple $1 million to make a show, that's going to change your life. But even so, you've already made it. And so walking in with properly managed expectations, saying, no matter what happens here, I'm doing pretty good for myself. It's going to go a long way. My old writing partner, Mark Cope, always he had this great analogy that I like to use, where when you're walking into a room to pitch a TV show, that person on the other end is sitting there and they have, say, a bag of gold coins. Let's say they've got 7 gold coins. And over the course of the year, they're going to distribute those 7 gold coins to a select number of people, 7 people. And those gold coins are valuable. They're going to change people's lives, worth a lot of money. They're a year of work, of steady work, which in our industry is something rare. They can only hand out 7 of those coins. And the job of your pitch is to convince them that you're one of those special 7. And the other flip side of that coin is that you might not be the right fit for that. And the odds are against you. And that's okay, because this is a numbers game. There's a reason why most times when you go out and pitch, you're pitching a bunch of different networks, not just one. Because ultimately, the odds of you selling a show to any of those networks is pretty low. So much of pitching is building relationships, is figuring out the perfect puzzle piece that matches show to network to distributor. And so the odds are you're not going to sell it. That's okay. Know that going in and understand that this might not be a right fit. That's okay. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Hell, your show shouldn't be everyone's cup of tea. That's going to be a terrible show if it appeals to literally everybody. That means you're going to be really watered down and everyone's going to think that your show's just kind of okay. It's fine. Whatever. You want your show to be special. You want somebody to get excited about it. And so you walk in there with managed expectations where you might walk out of it and that network might say, oh, it's not exactly what we're looking for. But you control the things that you can control. Focus on that. I want you to walk out of your pitches being able to answer yes to the question of, did you take care of everything under your control? You can't turn a no into a yes, but you can turn a yes into a no if you're trying desperately to make something fit. You're like, no, here, if I do this song and dance, then maybe you, the no that you gave me, you'll say yes, right? No. The number of times that I've gone in, pitched a network, and gotten the feedback, great pitch, loved it, gotten genuine feedback that was really positive, where they connected with every aspect of it, but just said, it's not what we're looking for right now. That's the most common experience that I have. And more, the feedback becomes like, great pitch, awesome, just isn't the show that we're looking for right now, or we have something else in development that's too similar. There's a million different reasons why your show might not go, but you have to let it go when it's not in your control. Did you fuck something up? Did you not do the homework? Did you go in and it was a perfect opportunity to sell the show and something that you did affected it not selling? All right, well, then that's the time to focus on things you can do better. But if you're walking in there with the expectation of, I took care of everything under my control, there's a million things outside of my control that I cannot affect. You walk in with that mindset, you're going to be able to leave the pitch knowing that you did your absolute best. You're going to leave with a sense of satisfaction. Trying to change things that are out of your control, it's a battle that's not worth fighting. Okay, so manage your expectations. Walk in, know that the odds are against you. These are long odds, but the way that you make those odds shorter is you keep taking hacks at it. You keep swinging. You keep going after it, because ultimately one of those is going to hit, and that's all that you need. You don't need everybody to buy your show. You just need one person to go, that's the thing I want to see on TV. And that person can put it on TV. That's all you need. And so focus on that. Properly manage your expectations. That is the last thing that we are hitting on today in identifying how to become a great pitcher, not just a good pitcher. So to reiterate, the key points to going from a good pitcher to a great pitcher: number 1, preparation. Number 2, focus. Performance. Excitement. Storytelling, genuineness, being able to create a comfortable energy, and finally, properly managed expectations. Put all that together, congratulations. You're a great pitcher. You're the greatest pitcher of all time. So once again, my name is Carlo Gonzales-Moss. I will see you all back here next week. This is a 7-week course If y'all have any questions or anything, please reach out to me either on social media. You can find me at Carlo Moss or at MARANTY.com. Shoot me an email on there or leave a comment either on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you're watching this. I will answer them next week. It has been a pleasure getting to tell you all about this, and good luck on all your pitches. Or actually, we don't say good luck, break a leg. All right, talk to y'all next week. Bye.